the Marty Moylan came out earlier today, he will have some people coming to his defense and saying, look, he has led us to victories.
Well, but clearly opponents to things like the graduated income tax amendment and the retention of Democratic State Supreme Court Justice Thomas Kilbride successfully sort of painted them as part of the Madigan machine, and it seemed to stick. Mike, do you think that Madigan realizes that?
Oh, he realizes it. He's in the last, I was told in the last 10, 14, 15 days before the election, he was on the phone relentlessly doing loyalty checks with people who owe him, and that's most of those in the Democratic caucus in the House. And he raised a ton of dough, millions and millions of bucks. And so we saw Moylan come out in Des Plaines, as Craig observed. Jim McSweeney from the Operating Engineers Local 150 also came out, basically told Dick Durbin and Duckworth to shut the front door. Still, the fact is, there's been a lot of talk about the problems that the Democrats faced. There were some, and they lost 4 House seats. They picked up 2, but it was a net loss of 2. Still, on the state Senate side, they actually picked up a seat. Karina Villa up in District 25, Jim Oberweiss's old seat, that's going to be, that was flipped to the Democrats. And there's Craig, I know out your way, if I'm not mistaken, Kane County is going to have its first Democratic county executive, county chair. I think it's Corinne Perrogue. She got elected. I think there were some new Democrats elected on the DuPage County board.
So I guess it was a mixed. It was a night of mixed.
About about the Democratic problems. They had some pickups in the suburbs.
So it was a mixed results, but still the marquee here was the graduated income tax amendment that failed. Maria, why do you think that voters didn't approve it?
I think there was just a lot of misinformation. I think there was efforts on both sides. Pritzker spent millions of dollars, so that Griffin also spent about the same. So I think that a lot of folks were bombarded with this information. Now we know that about 71% of Chicagoans voted yes for the amendment. So it's really up to the rest of the state. And I think it shows that the rest of the state is very, very conservative.
All right, so we have a congressional race out there in the 14th district that's still up in the air, although the Republican challenger Jim Oberweiss called it for himself, basically, declared himself the winner. There's still a couple thousand provisional ballots out there. Craig Dellimore, do you know which way those ballots might go?
Well, the problem is the way this district is drawn. It is a seven counties covered in this district, and it runs from Shanahan on the south all the way up to the Wisconsin border. A number of those counties are rural. They may go for Oberweiss. Right now, Oberweiss is ahead by about 600-ish kind of votes. I think that it's going to be very, very close. And, Oberweiss calling it for himself was probably premature, but you also don't see Lauren Underwood making any claims either. This is going to be a really tight race, and it's one that under normal circumstances you would have thought that the Democrats would have a really strong performance here, because she had a record and really had a more bipartisan record than Sean Casten, who squeaked by on his race against Jeannie Ives.
And speaking of Sean Casten, Jeannie Ives, the 11th Congressional District, Dana Kozlov, was that a closer result than you expected? Casten won pretty decisively over Peter Roskam 2 years ago, and it seems to be one of those districts that has gone from red to blue, mirroring other suburban districts across the country.
I don't know that I'm honestly the best person to ask on that. I think everything right now, politically speaking, and in terms of how COVID and stay-at-home orders, et cetera, have impacted a lot of people's feelings on perhaps decisions made and people might think made along party lines, which is probably erroneous. I don't know that I'm the best person to ask on that one, because I do say this though. I do think I think things are very unpredictable in certain areas, including that one, in terms of exactly how people are leaning. And I think the past 4 years is partly to blame. I think there's a lot of other factors, but I'm going to defer to one of my other esteemed colleagues to
Can I add,
Mike, I know
that.
you want to jump in here.
I was going to just say, can I add a quick thing?
Oh,
I think
yeah,
one of
go
the
ahead,
issues
Craig.
that hasn't come up yet is public safety. I think the unrest that we've had also factored in here, and in the suburbs, angst over racial tensions probably also was a factor.
You're thinking it might have moved folks to the right when polling
Yes.
indicated that it looked like Democrats were on track to maybe add to their congressional seats
Well,
and
I
take
think
the
something,
Senate.
Craig, you tell me. I think what happened. Yeah, I think what happened 2 years ago when Kasten beat the longtime incumbent there, longtime Republican incumbent, a lot of Republicans stayed home. This time they were energized and mobilized by Trump, and both sides came out. I think that's why things were closer in a bunch of areas.
All right, then there was the very contentious Cook County State's Attorney's race. Kim Foxx seemed to win pretty handily against Republican challenger Pat O'Brien. Maria, was this a surprise? Did you expect this to be pretty close?
I was not surprised. I did think that there was going to be a little bit of a difference between this, or it would be a closer race. But I do know that Chicagoans and folks in Cook County are ready for criminal justice reforms. It shows in the way that folks voted. It also, when I was looking at how immigrants were sort of involved in that race, Kim Foxx was a plaintiff in a lawsuit against the Trump administration challenging his extended definition for the public charge rule. And I think that during that battle, the other plaintiff, the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, communicated a lot with Kim Foxx. And there was a lot of push to get new voters, new citizens out to the polls.
Mike, I want to go back to a race that I referenced a little earlier, that state Supreme Court race out in Kane County, or the retention decision for Democratic Justice Thomas Kilbride. He lost that bid. It could change the balance of the Supreme Court. It could be a Republican 4-3 majority. What happens now that he lost retention? It's pretty unclear.
Well, he's going to be gone very shortly, and the Supreme Court, the way it traditionally works, Paris, is that the state Supreme Court, the remaining justices confab, and they pick a caretaker to serve in that role for the next 2 years. The understanding is that they generally pick somebody who's agreed not to run, but this isn't in writing. This is one of the norms. We'll see if that's observed. One of the questions is whether Kilbride, potentially he could participate in picking his successor. I know there's some strong feelings about that. And then in 2022, the Republicans and the Democrats will nominate candidates who face off for that contest. But here's something to remember. That district, I'm told Mike Madigan already has a map in his head. Of course, this is remap time next year. That contest in 2022 is not going to be held. It'll have the same number as this district.
It'll be a very different looking district, you're saying.
Yeah, it's going to be a very different district, and I've had insiders tell me it's going to be a much more Democratic district.
Well, and that seems to be one of the reasons that Speaker Madigan wants to stay around, doesn't want to go anywhere. I mean, this is about the time where they redraw the legislative districts, the maps, and that's always been one of Speaker Madigan's favorite things to do. Craig Dellimore, but what would it mean if the state Supreme Court shifted its political balance to 4-3 Republican?
That would really be, I mean, right now it's 4-3 Democrats, and that is why the court has not approved, for example, pension changes that governors have wanted. It is a more, it has been more pro-labor. It has not approved term limits and, or for that matter, new ways of doing the maps that might be more equitable and more reflect the voters. So those things could change if it flips over to a more Republican court.
And I'm sure that that race is going to be very interesting to watch in 2 years. All right, let's move on to the COVID news from today. The governor says that more than 10,000 positive tests a day are going on right now in the state. Might have to do further rollbacks and possibly a full shutdown down the road. Take a look.
It's the last thing I want to do, but I'm ready to do it, because if we can't make these numbers, flatten and head back down again, the only way that we know right now, because there's no medication, there's no vaccine, the only way really that science has told us that we can limit the number of cases or the epidemiological spread of the disease is by having less interaction, and less interaction means cutting off people's ability to interact in various places.
Dana Kozlov, 10,000 cases a day is a staggering number. Where do you think we're headed with this latest wave? Have we even come close to the peak yet?
I don't know that even the health officials know, at least based on the last time I sat in on that news conference, which was yesterday. I think he was talking about at least trying to get it to where it flattens out, where it doesn't keep going up, and it's still going up. And so, and being that correct me if I'm wrong, but we've never had, this is the highest number of cases in one day ever.
Today was a record, I believe, another record.
Right. And it seems to be going in that direction every day. So I don't think anybody right now feels like they can predict if we're near a peak. And I do believe, I just have a sense that the governor means what he says, and I wouldn't be surprised if this doesn't start to flatten out soon in some way, that we would have another stay-at-home order. But I know he's hesitant, not from firsthand knowledge, but just from covering him. I know he's hesitant to do that because right now the economy obviously is so tenuous, and so many people are still struggling. Folks trying to still get unemployment. So you really have to balance that. So I do think that would be a last resort.
It's a total catch-22. All right, well, we're out of time right now. So our thanks to Craig Dellamore, Mike Flannery, Dana Kozlov, and Maria Inez Zamudio. And that is our show for this Friday night. Don't forget you can get Chicago Tonight and the Week in Review streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. And be sure to join us tomorrow night at 6 for Chicago Tonight Latino Voices and 6 p.m. Sunday for Chicago Tonight Black Voices. And then we're back at 7 o'clock next week where we take a look at the mounting legal challenges in the race for president and efforts to stem COVID-19. As we just mentioned, Illinois deaths top 10,000. And now for the Week in Review, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy, stay safe, take a breath, relax, have a good weekend.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud of their attorneys selected for the 2020 Illinois Super Lawyers List.